So earlier this semester, I had a classmate pull me aside outside of class after a social psychology course that we shared together, and he told me that he believes that discrimination against gay people is okay. He said that because they're in the minority and they make other people uncomfortable, that they shouldn't have the same rights as everybody else. Today you should listen to me because I know what it's like to be gay and to grow up in a Christian world. I know what it's like to not always feel like you belong or to not always feel like your rights are as important as everyone else's. Today I'm going to be arguing for the removal of the religious freedom laws. I'm going to be arguing that religious freedom laws threaten the constitutional rights of LGBT Americans. I'm going to be arguing that the removal of the religious freedom laws will increase the rights of LGBT Americans. And lastly, I'm going to be arguing that the removal of the religious freedom laws will not decrease the First Amendment rights of religious Americans. So first, religious freedom laws threaten the constitutional rights of LGBT Americans. 19 states have these religious freedom laws, according to an article in the Times by Kelly Steinberg. Essentially, this law allows for a person of religious background to discriminate against anyone they want based on their religious beliefs. So essentially, because the Bible might allow for some negative views of the gay community, that a Christian person would be allowed to deny them service in their store simply because they're gay. We saw an example of this in an article in the Washington Post by Bradford Richmond, and he wrote about a lesbian couple in Oregon who attempted to buy a wedding cake. The owner of the store, Melissa Klein, denied them this cake because she was Christian and she didn't believe in their marriage. So this gay couple was not allowed to buy a cake. They had to leave the store because they were gay. This is unconstitutional. The 14th Amendment to the Constitution states that all Americans are entitled to the rights of life, liberty, and property. Liberty in this sense meaning the state of freedom from an oppressive restriction based on one's beliefs, political views, and their choice or their way of life. So, to deny a person a cake because of their sexual orientation is an unlawful, oppressive restriction, and it is unconstitutional. So why is the Constitution even important? America is a law-based society. The Soviet president, Mikhail Gorbachev, stated in his speech, The Importance of a Union, that without union under law, a nation would fall apart. It's what keeps us all on the same page. It's what gives a basis for peace and justice in a nation, and without it, it would be a catastrophe. So now that I've talked about how religious freedom laws threaten the rights of LGBT Americans, I'll be talking about how the removal of religious freedom laws will improve or give them back their rights. The writers Christopher Eisenberg and Lawrence Sater write in their article against the religious freedom laws that no person should ever be given the right to discriminate against someone else. And this isn't the first time we've seen mass discrimination either. Racial discrimination was at its peak during slavery and in the many years that followed. We went from a state of being where people thought it was literally their right to own another person, to years later when we couldn't even drink out of the same drinking fountain as people who were a different race than us. And then today, we have black teachers, we have black co-workers, we have interracial marriages happening all over the place. We have blacks in politics. Our president was black. He led the country for 8 years. And this was all made possible with the change of a law. The Anti-Discrimination Act that was put into place allowed for the change in extrinsic behaviors. So I'm not arguing that changing the law, repealing the religious freedom laws, will immediately change the intrinsic attitudes of all Americans. Of course not. This would be ridiculous to assume so. But I am arguing that with the changing of this law, it will begin to change the extrinsic behaviors of all Americans because we follow laws. We like to stick to the status quo. And this happened with the passing of the Anti-Discrimination Acts. This began to better the discriminatory mindset of Americans towards blacks. And I'm arguing that this will definitely happen for those in the LGBTQ community as well, with the removal of the religious freedom laws. So now that I've talked about how removing the religious freedom laws will better the rights of LGBT Americans, I will be talking about how removing the religious freedom laws will not decrease the First Amendment rights of religious Americans. Our current Vice President, Mike Pence, was previously the governor of Indiana. And when he was in office there, he passed religious freedom laws. And in defending this, advocating for it, he stated that he believes they're important for those who feel like their religious rights or their First Amendment rights are being infringed upon. Now, I am a complete advocate of religious rights. I think that that's part of what makes America so unique. It's part of what makes each individual in America so special. But what I do not agree with is the fact that religious freedom laws are necessary to uphold these religious rights. The First Amendment does an excellent job of outlining the rights that a religious person is entitled to. It allows you to choose your religion. It allows you to freely practice your religion. It allows you to peacefully assemble and talk about your religion. It even allows you to go out and try to convince other people to follow your religion, or to tell them, no, don't believe that, believe mine. These are a lot of rights. There are infinite freedoms that religious people have under the American Constitution. However, the only thing that the First Amendment right does not allow a religious person to do is to discriminate. And this is the only thing that the religious freedom laws differ with. And Mike Pence knows this. In the same speech where he was talking about his advocacy for the religious freedom laws, he talked about how he's well aware that the LGBT community is the only minority group that is not protected by the anti-discrimination laws. Therefore, it is the only minority group that is subject to discrimination because of religious freedom laws. And therein lies the problem. It's based in discrimination and it's unconstitutional. So, today, I've talked about my advocacy for the removal of religious freedom laws. I've argued that they are unconstitutional and they threaten the constitutional rights of LGBT Americans. I've argued that the removal of religious freedom laws will increase the rights of LGBT Americans. And third, I have argued that the removal of religious freedom laws will not decrease the First Amendment rights of religious or Christian Americans. I think that all Americans deserve to live in a world or in a nation where they feel like they are a safe, equal part of this society. And to quote Martin Luther King, I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.